You're listening to the Raw Knowledge Podcast. Welcome back, guys. Another episode. I'm joined today by Jon Davie.
Hey, mate.
Thanks for coming down. I appreciate it, my man.
No worries.
It's been a while.
It's been a while.
I think the last chat we had was, in person. Oh, actually, I think I seen you in Nike a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And then it was Ashmore before that, where I first joined World Gym.
Yeah.
And here we are, like almost a decade later.
I know, it's crazy. Time just flies.
Literally. Now, I know some people are going to know your name. They probably know who you are. But for people who don't, I always like to say, give us a bit of a synopsis, an elevator pitch, if you will.
Yeah.
Who you are, what you do, and sort of why you do it.
So at the moment, I'm director of World Gym Australia.
Yeah.
I started the brand in Australia 17 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, I was kind of bodybuilding a little bit. Tried to be a bodybuilder. And I worked for a supplement company, Masashi, for 20 years.
Yes.
But yeah, my focus at the moment is the gym, setting up world gyms.
Yeah.
That's my role.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. And we're going to unpack it a little bit, and it's up to you. We don't have to necessarily go in order, but as always, want to talk about your journey, maybe some of the biggest lessons learned, some of the wins, some of the struggles along the way. Again, just as we spoke about before we sort of turn the mics on, just getting a message across to people who are interested, you know. And oftentimes I think by telling stories, as we've always done, it's the best way to learn. It's fun, it's engaging, and you can kind of read between the lines, which is
100%.
good. So maybe start off with what got you initially into lifting or into the fitness industry.
Okay, so yeah, mate, I didn't have a hardship story as a kid, right?
Yeah.
You know, I had great parents. We didn't have a lot of money. I lived in Pakuranga, which is a pretty poor suburb of New Zealand, but fantastic parents. So I just was a naughty kid. I got in a bit of trouble when I was younger, 13, 14, got into a few things that got misled by a few people into the wrong direction, and it wasn't until I actually started lifting weights because I was going to a place called the Drop-In, and it was in Tarakau Park in New Zealand. And it was basically for misguided youth to go in and catch up with pastors and the police and just talk about their issues.
For sure.
But they had a gym set there. So I started lifting, and one of the pastors said, man, you got a pretty good physique. You should, think about doing this a little more serious. And, as a kid, I think kids grow up with not a lot of positive feedback about themselves. I think that's a problem with society now. The kids go through their life and they don't actually feel like they're winning at anything. But lifting weights gave me that positive feedback. I'd go on, I'd lift a heavier weight, I'd lift more reps. You have that endorsing feeling when you finish. So he got me. I was sent to a boarding school. I was a day boy. I was a day boy at boarding school, and he gave me a gym membership. He got me a gym membership. I don't know how he got it, but he got me a gym membership at a gym near there. And that's my journey. I started lifting weights, and it gave me self-value. I got rid of the crowd that I was with, and it just completely changed the direction of my life. And it was a positive thing. I felt great. I felt great going into a gym, dedicating my time to something that was a positive outcome for me. So, I skipped over all the things I was doing that was getting me in trouble and began to focus more on what my journey was going to look like for the rest of my life.
I think that's something that's overlooked with like fitness or even the gym. It's that hidden kind of, you go there, yeah, it's good, but mentally you feel good. It releases the feel good hormones and it's addictive, and you're like, oh, actually, I see a return on my investment. And obviously that sometimes is delayed physically, the development, but mentally I think, it really does. It's kind of like reading. I use that as an example. It's really unglamorous, and it's not anything like magic, and same with training. You lift in weights, cool, you get a pump, you go, but it's good, but then you do it and you're like, actually, this is pretty good, it makes me feel good.
100%. And
I think a lot of the time that can really kind of give someone a bit of a center stone. I always say it's like therapy.
Yeah, 100%. And like you're saying, mate, for me, probably the start of it wasn't physique changes. It was up here. I didn't want to go out and drink. I didn't want to go out and do the thing. And I was young. I was 13, 14, right? So I was getting kicked out of schools for drinking and doing naughty stuff. So I didn't want to drink because it would affect my training. And then I didn't want to eat bad because it would affect my training. And mentally, the mental effects of it were more so than the physical effects of it, first of all. Then the physical stuff starts happening. And that supports the mental role. I felt better. I felt healthier. I was sleeping better. They start noticing changes in your body. People start saying to you, wow, you're looking different, and that whole physical and mental therapy began to change my life
Yeah, it's like a positive reinforcement.
Yeah.
I imagine as well you made some friends in the gym. Were there any people in there that influenced you specifically? Any friends, mentors? Did you get a personal trainer? What did that kind of trajectory look like when you got the gym? And so you were 14 when you started?
Started training when I was about in the drop-in when I was 13, 14.
Right.
And then I went to this Mount Albert Grammar, which was a fantastic school, very, very strict. They had a boarding school as well attached to it, so a very strict school. And they had a gym there. So 15, 16, I really started getting into it. 16 I joined my first gym. And the owner of the gym, I can remember walking into the gym and there was a picture of this dude, like, is in competition shape, and I stood there looking at it. The next thing, the door opened and he walked out.
Oh, really?
His name was Tony Martin.
Right.
So he was my first introduction. And, when you meet someone he was an awesome guy to talk to, had time to talk, he'd talk to me for hours. He was the owner of the gym. I'm like, and this guy's got everything you could possibly want, right? He's got a great physique, everyone knows him, he's a friendly guy, he gets on well with everything. So, and then you associate with other people that are similar. So a guy called Steve Artua, who's, he's a Kiwi boy, Samoan, and, he could do anything he wanted to. He was a boxing heavyweight champion of New Zealand at one time. He bodybuilded and he'd win every show. But you start to immerse yourself around people that are positive, and it rubs off on you. It becomes something that you want to be like them. You want to have that vibe that they have. And it's hard to pinpoint exactly for me at what point my whole life changed, but somewhere in those years between 15 and 17, my whole mental makeup of where I wanted to be in life changed. Because before that, I used to think, like a lot of kids do, I want to make a heap of money. I want to be a millionaire. Money's going to make me happy, and that was all it was about. And as I got older, I look back and just think that was so stupid to think that, because money will not buy you happiness. You're going to you're going to work most of your life. You're going to work a lot of people work in a job they hate. They get good at doing a job they don't like. And for me, it was, I want to do a job that I like. Even if I don't make a lot of money and I can be like, Tony Martin, be happy all the time and be in an industry I love, that's where I want to be. And the best thing about it is if you do find a job you love and you're good at it, generally it rewards you, and you become financially successful.
Couldn't agree more. I think that is a big misconception about success these days, especially with the younger generation. We were talking about it before as well. What is it? They say happiness is when who you are, your thoughts, your feet, everything's aligned. And it really is. And as you said there, that's the clincher at the end. It's actually, if you do something that gives you purpose, excites you, gives you passion, you generally become good at it, or you are good at it, and people want to invest or pay you for it, and you're helping them, and it's a win-win. But yeah, I guess when you just chase the dollar, it's not great. But it's funny you say that about some of those guys like role models, and you make those observations, and you look and you're like, oh, actually that's like this is interesting how it's not just about the lifting weights. There is so much more to it, and it sort of inspires you to want to change.
Yeah, I mean some of the best times I had weren't actually in the gym. It was sitting out in the reception area talking to, I remember Steve McDowell, who was an All Black. This is when it was unprofessional. It wasn't a professional sport. He would come in and train at 8 o'clock at night after he finished at his pub, and I had asked me to spot him. This is a top All Black, and I'd spot him. Then Jonah Lomu was training in the gym. And then eventually I'd end up working for Musashi, and we sponsored a lot of the rugby players. So you start to, those opportunities that came up after my initial attraction to bodybuilding led me in to meet these amazing people. And there's something about those types of people that make you want to be better, that they make you want to do better.
Yeah, and that, like you said, you surround yourself with those people, the average of the 5 people, what they say you hang around with, and it's not too far wrong. I mean, I'm sure there's, you can argue the stats, but you got to hang around with like-minded, or as my friend says, like-hearted people.
Yeah,
I think, which is important. How did you end up getting the opportunity with Musashi? Did that come before you were competing in bodybuilding, during, after?
No. So again, I've always been, I started working. My first job was I used to collect cans and bottles when I was 8.
Yeah.
So Mum, I'd disappear on a Saturday or afternoon after school, and I'd disappear looking for cans and bottles. and I'd take them down to Packering shopping centre, cash them in, make a bit of money. Then I got a job working as a doing milk runs, you know, so I was doing 2 jobs, and I always thought, you know, I want to make money, and I was prepared to do anything to make money. It didn't matter what job it was, and whatever job I did as well as I could, because it was work ethic, right? And I got taught that from bodybuilding. Bodybuilding taught me that whatever you do, if you're going to go to the gym, don't waste your time having a shitty workout. Put everything you can put into it, because even those days that you feel like you're dragging your ass into the gym and you can have a bad workout, some of those times are the best workouts you can have. So I got offered an opportunity from a guy called Nick Jones, who owns Gentech now, right? Yes. Gentech, Nick was working for Masashi at the time, and I said, I really want to work for Masashi. It was like the supplement company. He said, the only thing I've got is 2 hours on a Thursday night, 2 hours on a Saturday morning, and you get paid in protein powder. And I'm like, done. Right?
Yeah.
It's foot in the door.
Why not?
So I was working, you know, doing that, and that led into, I got really good at it.
Yeah.
And the shops would say, oh, when John's on Thursday and Saturday, we sell twice as much or 3 times as much protein powder. That led me to getting a sales job, and that led me to getting a management job, and that led me doing product development, and that led me to meeting all these teams. You know, we worked with 23 different professional teams. So you never know when you start, that this where it could go. And that's why I always say to people, no matter what job you get, even if it's a job you hate, just do it well, because you never know where it's going to take you. But if you do it shitty, you do a shitty job of it, you're never going to get recommended for anything else.
Yeah, exactly. You had the right attitude, I think. You were willing to grow and learn and put your effort in.
And that, again, was from bodybuilding. You know, bodybuilding is the toughest sport. Anyone can say that their sport's tougher, but when you fully commit to being a bodybuilder, you basically get up in the morning, your whole day's structured around eating 6 or 7 meals, and training and doing your cardio, and then trying to do your job at the same time, because we're all making a living, or multiple jobs, because I've never had one job. You know, ever since I was 8 years old, I've had 2 or 3 jobs, which is hard for me to understand why people nowadays, you know, whinge and complain if they do a 9-to-5 job and they don't make ends meet, right? That's just the way it is, mate. Go and get another job.
Yeah.
So it was work ethic. So it taught me about work ethic, and I think, you know, doing whatever you do it well, and you never know what's going to come of it.
Yeah, well, this is true. Like you said, you go in there and you put your best foot forward. Especially, like you said, if you wanted to climb the ranks, you know, you wanted to be part of that, and you could have easily said, oh, am I getting paid? And they say no. And you go, well, that's probably a good lesson for a lot of people who are starting out, younger folk or not. It's just the mentality. It's like, if that's, for example, one of my friends, her dream job is to work at Movie World. She was trying to get in. There was this job come up, and it wasn't, she sacrificed a lot of money to go and work there. But she knew that it was worth it, because that was what she wanted to do, and ultimately now she's got a better job there, and she's getting, you know, more money, and she can support and do it. But she took the hit initially to get into the organisation, which she loved, and because she loves it, she's just proven herself, and, you know, can get in. But like you said, foot in the door can sometimes be key.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter what foot it is, mate. Like, if you're doing, you know, for me, the first job I got in the gym was a night manager. What the night manager. So I was going to uni tech at the day, so that was 8 till 4. Then I'd come home, I'd sleep for 4 hours, and I'd go to work at 10 o'clock, work all night till 6 o'clock, have a sleep for an hour, and then go back to uni. And I did that every day. And my job was cleaning. So I used to scrub the toilets, you know, all night for 6 or 8 hours, clean a gym. That was it for me, you know. But it was a foot in the door. And if I never said, okay, I'm going to do that, and I did it well, then I got offered, you know, different roles in the gym. So, yeah, it's so important to take opportunities. And yeah, there's no shame in taking a role in a business that you think is a great business at a really low entry level, because you've got to prove to them how good you are. They're not going to put you in a role that they don't know if you're qualified enough to do, even though you might think you are. It's just take a starting point and prove to them, and you'll move up.
Yeah, you're not wrong. And I think these days people sort of maybe are a little bit entitled when people come in, or they think, oh, I should get there. But like, sometimes you got to prove it. You got to get the runs on the board, or the wins on the board initially in the early days as well. So with me, and it's funny you mentioned Nick. Actually, Nick's been on the podcast, and we did some stuff together. We've done a couple of things together actually. Now he's a top bloke. I really get on with him. He's from the UK as well, and I think we kind of met through Nathan Wallace.
Right. Yeah.
When I was training at Hold Your Own for a little spell, and
Yeah.
then we was doing some stuff with nutrition. Where anyway, he's a top bloke and he's got some funny stories. That's for sure. And he's given me a lot of. He was actually funny. He approached me at World Gym, and this is quite interesting. And he said, oh, he goes, hey man, he goes, I just want to say your form's good. And I was like, thanks. And it's massive bodybuilder. I'm like, taking the piss or what? And I was like, he's like, no. I said, no, it's good. Anyway, and I went over to the bin and I seen this poster on the wall, Nick Jones doing a seminar, and I was like, and I said, is that you on the poster? And he went, yeah, it is. And I went, Nick Jones? And he goes, yeah. And I said, he just gave me a compliment. He's like, yeah. He goes, oh, I'm not really big into the fact that you're very humble.
Yeah.
And he gave me a lot of good
100%.
advice that day that I still remember and I've still put into practice. And then like later on, we ended up sort of doing this stuff. So it's good that he gave you that opportunity at Musashi as well.
He's my best man and at my wedding, and it's those people in your life that you can make a phone call to.
Yeah.
Maybe it's been 2 years and it's like it's a day.
Yeah.
And you have him and another guy called Ron Partlow, and Rob Lamb, who lives on the coast. They're my three closest friends, and one other, Florent Belby. But anytime I give them a call, it's like a day's passed, half a day's passed. It could be 2 years.
Yeah, you don't get many friends like that in life.
No.
And you got to keep them close. That's for sure. Which is good. Let's talk about then the bodybuilding as well. That side of things. When did you start thinking about competing? Was that just inspired again by these role models, and you thought, what, I wouldn't mind looking like that and getting on the stage? Talk us through maybe some of that journey.
Yeah. Okay. So obviously you start out. And everyone, this one thing I will say right from the beginning, everyone who walks into a gym is intimidated. Yeah. Doesn't matter what level you're at. I walked in and I was intimidated. I saw dudes that I'm like were big, and rugby players and people that I knew that were training really hard. And as I got more confident that they're just normal people, and those people, as you know, look at you and go, great. They're not looking at you going, what the fuck are you doing in the gym? Yeah. You shouldn't be in here. You're not one of us. They're looking at, good on you, mate. Because I started just like you're starting. It's good that you're here. And so they brought me up and encouraged me, and I train, you meet these people, and eventually someone said, man, you should compete as a junior, because I was pretty big. I got pretty big pretty quick, and so I competed as a junior, and I came second. And the second's always is a great number, right? But everyone wants to win, of course. So,
and if you're competitive, that's the only one, right?
That's right. So then that started the journey. And I think the biggest part for me was the 12. At that time, I died for 12 weeks. So committing yourself to eating fish, veggies, rice with no sauces, and this was back in the day when it was a little bit different from now. It was old school. Training like I trained really gave me mental strength. I mean, there's nothing that you can gain more than mental strength from doing something like that. Dedicating yourself to something, so it doesn't matter what it is. It could be climbing Mount Everest and putting in a 6-month plan to get there. It makes you so much stronger, and I love that. So the next show I was looking forward to, the day after I finished that show, I'm like, I'm going to do this next show. Maybe a few weeks out you're going, I'm never doing this again. But then suddenly you do it and you're like, man, I can't wait for the next show. And so that became a thing, because I was seeing physical changes in my body was growing. My first show I competed was 105, but I was overweight, so I lost the show because of condition. And then I moved over to Australia and competed 3 times in the Queensland before I won it. And I got beaten by Glenn a couple of times. What was his name? Greg Tottenham beat me.
Right, okay, yeah.
Greg Tottenham used to run, unfortunately he just passed recently, but he used to run one of the best PT studios here down on the coast. Right. He beat me 3 times, and I'm pretty competitive, so I wanted to beat him, and I won. Then I went to the Nationals and came 3rd, and took 3 years off to put on weight, because in those times I just needed more size.
Was this IFBB?
IFBB
as well, yeah.
So
was there many, back in the day when you were competing as well, or even back then, was there many, because there's so many now, it's so confusing, like, even for me, and I'm not like riding, but you know, it's like, I can't keep up with it. I mean, the IFBB's like the gold standard. That's kind of what I know is, for me, I deem that to be kind of the original. Of
Yeah.
like when I think of bodybuilding, I think of kind of the classic era sort of thing. Do you know?
Yeah.
But now there's not that it's a bad thing, but there's many different iterations, and a lot of it now is becoming a bit more fashiony, which, you know, fair enough. It is a show, but
100%. You know, there's nothing for me. Back in my days, there was NABA and IFBB. They were running the big shows. Then a lot of the natural federations came out, and then obviously things like WBFF started, which is fine to me. Like there's you know, anything that gets people in the fitness industry, that gets people active and can maybe build that mental strength as well as the physical, because I don't think it's good to have one without the other.
It's unbalanced.
It's unbalanced. So, and I don't think most people do. I think if you gain a physical response, you get some kind of mental response.
They're connected.
They're connected, yeah. So back in my time, was bodybuilding was IFBB and NABA. I chose IFBB only because there was the Mr. Olympia show, and the Mr. Olympia show, and I collected every video. So I remember the show was in September. I get the video in March. So almost 6 months later, the video would finally arrive.
Yeah.
You know, you put it in. All your mates would come around. You'd watch it, because that was the first time you saw it.
Yeah.
It wasn't published on TV or on YouTube or
None
anything
of
like
that.
And I did that right up until the year I finally competed in Olympia. And then I never declared.
Well, talk us through what that experience was like for you, though, in terms of like just the feeling of being on that stage. Like I always say to people as well, you know, people say, "Oh, I'm thinking about competing." All right, you're thinking about competing, all right. And then I sort of give them things to have a look at. I said, "Well, look, have you been to a show?" Because I think that's the, you know,
First
like.
thing.
And I always say, my opinion is that you will know then, but you will know when you step on the stage very, very quickly whether it's for you or not.
100%.
And so I'd love for you to talk us through what it was like. So I can only imagine the feeling.
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
amazing.
I was introverted, right? So I was one of these guys that would wear not just a t-shirt. I'd wear a jumper, long pants every time I trained. No one ever saw my body.
Which, it's funny actually, because my dad always used to do that, and he always said to me, he goes, "Cover up, son. Don't show them anything."
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know whether that was your perception or not, but it's almost like this. Dorian Yates, I've been watching like The Shadow.
100%.
It's that kind of perception. I don't know if that was your go, but like you said, maybe it's just you didn't want to. Which is dichotomous for a bodybuilder, because everyone's like, "Oh no, they want to be seen." It's like,
No.
not all the time.
No. So I say that to people all the time. I've never ever trained in a singlet in a gym. And there's nothing wrong with training a singlet. It just wasn't for me.
It's not your style, yeah.
I just did what I did. But, you know, the whole thing for me at the time, I suppose, was if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it 100%. Because I had a beautiful partner, my wife, now. We've been together 25 years. And it has to be worth both our time and effort. She was cooking my meals and doing all that. We worked as a team. And when I decided that I was going to try and turn pro, after I turned pro, which was in 2000, I decided I was going to do the Grand Prix, which is an Australian show which qualifies for the Olympia.
Right.
But my daughter came along. And so it was going to be my final show. I was going to say, I got my pro card, and that was a great goal to have, but because I had my daughter, and when you have a kid, when that thing pops out and you look at it, your whole life changes, and any parent would know, would agree. The same. You just kind of think, okay, I've got to look after this thing. And anyway, I decided to do the Australian Grand Prix, and I placed third, which qualified me for the Olympia. So my retirement was put off. So then it was like, okay, I'm going to do the Olympia.
I've come this far, yeah.
I've got to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's my dream. I've got every Olympia since 1984 on tape at home that I watched religiously.
That's great.
So the Olympia show was, I went there to Venice 2 weeks before. I trained in Gold's Gym, World's Gym, and it was an incredible experience because you're around all these bodybuilders that are getting ready for the biggest show. It's like the Olympic Games.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's so positive for you mentally because you feel like I'm elite, I'm special, but at the same time it's humbling because you know I'm going to a show that I know there's no chance of me winning. And every other show I've been in for the last 15 years of my life, I had a really good chance of winning. To go into a show thinking maybe I can make top 10. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
But it's not the same, you haven't got the same drive behind you.
Yeah.
And I can honestly say that I believe I trained as hard, if not harder, than any of the guys getting ready for that show. I wasn't genetically gifted like Ronnie for lifting the huge, ridiculous weights he lifted. No one is genetically gifted like Ronnie.
Yeah.
And then these guys like, Flex Wheeler, Kevin Neveroney. It was an era where bodybuilding had kind of gone to a new level.
Those guys were big.
So the journey up to it was incredible, and then you kind of get swept up in the whole, you picked up the airport in a limo, and you go to the Mandalay Bay, and there's people waiting for you when they get there to interview you. It's surreal for a Kiwi kid from, or a Kiwi kid from originally from Pakuranga in West Auckland, or an Australian kid who lives on the Gold Coast, because I still was when I came here, 19 years old. So it's pretty surreal to be in that environment. And the show day, you get ready, you go down into the pump-up area, and, there's these idols of yours that you've been watching for 5-10 years coming up. And so, it's incredible, mate. You feel so, like, am I really here?
Yeah, it's like, pinch me.
Yeah, pinch me, right? But then, your mental drive kicks in, and you're like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this, man.
Just a quick one, guys, before we carry on with the podcast. For any of you who are interested in taking your health and physique to the next level, and you want to remove the guesswork, you're not quite getting the progress that you want, you're not seeing what you want to see in the mirror, and you're not feeling like you're really moving in the right direction, then click the link in the bio below, the apply button, where you can contact me. We can organize a free consultation, no obligation, and discover whether it's a good fit as coach and client. All right, back to it.
The crazy thing is, and this might sound a bit weird, but I don't think anyone ever thinks, even when going to that show, I pictured being compared to Ronnie Coleman and winning the show.
Yeah.
I never dreamed. None of my dreams were coming 14th.
Yeah.
I didn't think, those weren't what I was dreaming of.
Yeah, for sure.
So you're always dreaming that, I'm going to do well. So, but I'm deep down inside me, I knew that I wasn't probably going to get in the top 10. So it was very hard to get ready for a show like that. Anyway, go on stage, and, from watching that, I'd watched about 4 or 5 Olympias before that, so I was on the other side with the audience looking up. Being on that stage and watching the guys was incredible, man. Then when I did my routine, you get people cheering, and it's a real surreal feeling. But I knew, and at the end of my routine, I actually kissed the stage. I reached down and kissed the stage because I knew I was never coming back, and I knew that because I've been backstage with the most genetically gifted guys I had ever seen in one space, and I knew. The last year, in between 2 shows, I put on 1 kilo. So I'd done everything I had to do. I'd eaten 7,000 to 8,000 calories every day, 7 meals a day. I trained as hard as I possibly could. I did my cardio. I slept 8 to 10 hours a night. I did everything you could possibly do.
No stone was left unturned.
And I put 1 kilo.
Yeah.
And I realised I was not going to get any better. I'd reached my genetic ability. And these guys were way past that. And so I realised that although it was an incredible moment, it was a moment for me to say, this is it. My family was in the audience, my wife was pregnant with my son at the time, and so I knew it was a bittersweet time. And then, afterwards, after the show, there's interviews and meetings and what show you're going to do next. But I was going to do the Grand Prix after that, which was 3 shows in England. But I'd torn my tricep about 6 weeks before the Olympia, and I just kind of hobbled through. Yeah. And I had to go and get that fixed up. So that was it, and I made one more show attempt, which was an Australian show, and I should never have done it. That was 2 years after the Olympia, and I just thought, the show was going to be in Queensland on the Gold Coast, and I was like, maybe I should do it, but I wasn't 100% there. I had 2 beautiful kids, my wife, just started with the business, and so I wasn't able to dedicate the time you needed to dedicate to be at that level. And placed sixth, which wasn't a bad placing, but I wasn't in my best condition. I didn't look as good as I did a few years before, and that was it, done, dusted.
It's always that decision's hard, isn't it? Whether because you want to kind of finish on a high.
Oh yeah.
And what an experience though. Like you said, the Olympia and I think the bodybuilding is one of those, like a lot of elite sports. You got to be all in. You mentioned something before which really struck a chord with me, which is the mental fortitude you take from it. And I remember that was something I was surprised about. That was something I was surprised about when I competed. I remember about 6 weeks out, and I was like, I felt like death. I'm like, I mean, and I'm like, it's a badge of honor, whatever. And I was like, I don't know if it's, because it's unknown territory. If you've never, especially if it's my first time, you don't know. You don't, and everyone's got a different pain threshold and whatnot. And I was just thinking, fuck me, like this is. But the one thing that I try to explain to people, and you can only understand this if you've been to it. You mentioned about the routine and everything's just dialed in, and it's very selfish. But you kind of get this almost empty space where, because you are so dialed in, and it's just about, like you said, it's just about eat, sleep, train, if we summarize it, right? And then obviously you've got to try and take care of your family and navigate other things if you've got that in your life. There's a lot of time in here. And for me, that was really valuable, because that is actually what changed my trajectory with my career, because I had a lot of honest conversations with myself, and there was no hiding, because there's no sex drive's gone, there's no distraction, there's nothing. It's just those things, and once those needs are taken care of, Maslow's basic hierarchy needs, it's just you, and it's a very dark place. And you start to go, I've got to face up to maybe some demons in here, or whatever these thoughts are. And you can go one of two ways with that and resolve them, but I think there is some beautiful serenity within that, and if you can push through and you can address those things and you can use them and you can learn from them, it is invaluable. But you can't get there. You can't just jump to that place. No one will be able to experience that. You have to go through it.
100%.
Which I find is really ironic, and it's hard to explain to people, because you can't just experience that, but you have to work yourself to that point, and then you can't get away from it. You can't, people go, oh, you just eat and feel better. You don't.
No.
There's a certain time period that you need to just be in hell, per se, or go through that, the suck or whatever it is, and you have to embrace it.
Yeah.
And that is part of bodybuilding.
That's right. Especially, like you say, man, there was points when I was bodybuilding where I was eating, 2 kilos of meat a day. Because back in the day, we were told that you had to eat 600 to 800 grams of protein, and this was very early on. This is from the coaches in America.
Yeah.
Charles Glass and all these top coaches were saying that, with your body weight, you need to be eating. So I was eating, 500 grams of bassa, which is like 8 fillets of bassa, and, 200 grams of rice and 300 grams of veggies every meal.
It's a full-time job just eating.
And I'd have a big glass. And this sounds stupid to a lot of people.
Yeah.
But I would eat and then wash it down. Part of it would come back up. I'd wash it back down.
Yeah.
I did that for years, thinking that, and as silly as that sounds, people go, that was just stupid, you shouldn't have done it. Maybe I shouldn't have, but man, it taught me some discipline things, and getting up, like you say, training and going through those workouts and pushing yourself, and man, it takes a lot to make me upset or cry. There's times I got ready for some of my shows, got up in the morning or at the end of the day, and I'd cry.
Yeah.
I was that mentally and physically destroyed, I would cry.
Yeah.
But it taught me some really valuable life lessons, mate. It taught me that if I really put my mind to it, I can achieve anything. With hard work, I can achieve anything. It taught me about work ethic. It taught me about people around you will support you. And there's also people around you that are haters that, I had people coming out to me 2 weeks from the show going, why are you bothering? You're going to get beaten. From the Olympia, and I'm like, so what am I meant to do? Never do anything because someone might beat me, So it teaches you a lot about a lot of different things as well. But that mental fortitude, with preparing to put yourself through that again, after you've done one show, you do another show, and knowing that it's what it's going to be like again, it says a lot about a person.
It does.
And that's why there's so many people. And there's nothing wrong with this. There's so many people that will go for a show and then decide, that it's not really them. And there's nothing wrong with that, because for some people, their commitment level and what they think they're going to get out of it is not really as high as it needs to be. And so you'll get guys pulling out of shows, and that always happens. But find something else to do that you can really put that time and effort into and reap a similar reward. For me, it was bodybuilding. You know, it might not have been good if I was a basketball player or a rugby player. Even though I wanted to be a rugby player, I sucked at rugby. You know, I just break things all the time. I broke fingers and everything. Every time I played, I broke something. So I was never going to be a good rugby player.
Yeah, and that's the only thing with sport though as well, especially if you're training. You know, where people try and coincide them, and obviously it's different when you pay to do it and whatnot. But it's like if you've got fucking one injury, and it's like fuck it, puts you behind.
Yeah.
Especially if you've got to train in stages and this that you can't afford to have a day off.
Yeah, you know, and the other thing is you're in a sport that you're not going to make a living out of. You know, at the time, it was about 40 or 50 grand for someone in the top 5 at the Olympia. That's all they're getting paid.
I was going to say that is a weird misconception as well. Some people still think that because I remember my dad saying to me when I was young, when he was big into bodybuilding, he got me into lifting, my mum and dad, and he said to me, he goes, don't a lot of these guys, top guys, they're wealthy. So what do you mean they're wealthy? He goes, not all of them, but some of the bodybuilders, because like it's an expensive lifestyle. Like it's not people, or it's like it's not a way to make money, and some people think it is. I'm like, nah, you'd much better be a fitness model. But then even then, you need like all of now you've got brands, ambassadors, this, that, and the other. Yeah, it's an interesting sort of what people think. It's like, oh, they're in it. If they're not, you if you're on that stage, you are in it because you love it.
Yeah.
Because there's so much sacrifice that's in there. Is out of interest, is there anything, if you could go back and speak to your younger self, maybe I guess in your late 20s when you were like taking it, like you were like, all right, I'm thinking about competing. Was there would there be any advice you would offer yourself about training, nutrition, lifestyle, rest, anything that now you know now? If you could go back, and I'm thinking about the younger bodybuilders coming up now who are getting into it, any advice for yourself or for them?
Yeah, so actually, that's a good question, because I'm a big believer in having a backup plan, right? And a lot of people say, don't have a backup plan because it will take away from your dedication to whatever you're trying to do, right? But I always had in the back of my head that I loved the gym, and if it didn't work out for me as a bodybuilder, which obviously it didn't, I'd go back into the gym because I'd found a space that I felt very comfortable in. And there's, for every successful rugby player, singer, elite athlete, there's 1,000 that didn't make it. And if you've never had a backup plan and you get to the end of that time, if I never had anything else in my life apart from bodybuilding, when I stepped on that stage at the Olympia and I said, that's it, I'm done, I'd probably still have chased that dream. Realising that I was never going to make it, but maybe I could eke a small living out of it, doing the odd show and getting 5 or 10 grand here and maybe getting a sponsor. But to me, it would have been going back in time and probably earlier on and saying, maybe do a few courses and stuff that would help you later on if you didn't make it. Because as much as I love that attitude, where people say, I didn't have a backup plan, I was going to be, Metallica's lead singer, I didn't have a backup plan, I was going to be, I was going to be in a band, or that was it.
Yeah.
That's cool.
It's nice when
you made it.
It's nice when you're successful to say that.
But if you didn't make it and you're living on Skid Row, you might be thinking, shit, maybe I should have had a backup plan. So my biggest thing to kids is, when I talk to kids, and I do a fair bit of youth work now, is I always say, it's one thing to find a job and work really hard and be good at it. But eventually you want to find a job that you love, find a job that you don't like, but work hard and do it. But the most important thing for you to do is find a job that you love and then work hard. And don't worry about the money, because the money will come. And money, for me, I look back on my life, I'm 52 years old. So my life's, more than halfway through. And I look back and all the best times of my life have never involved money. They've always been about friends, family, sitting around a bonfire playing guitar, taking the birth of my kids. That never cost me anything. they're all my memories. So I say to my kids now, my job is to create memories, right, for my children, and memories for myself, because when I'm at home sitting, you know, by myself, they're the things that I smile and laugh about. It's not about, you know, the car I drive or whatever, because as you know, you get a car, 3 months later you come out, so what? But some of those memories I've had in bodybuilding, the friends I've met, the people that I've met, the places I've been, my kids, my wife, they're the memories I have, and they're the most important things. So, you know, that's probably the most important thing I'd say to a younger person is, you know, my daughter's one, you know, at the moment, you know, she's a hustler, man. She's like me, you know. She's out there doing whatever she can do to make money, and I keep having to reiterate to her, money's not the be or end all. It's the people you meet along the way, the friends you have. It's those moments that you love and laughter, people you love and people you laugh with, your friends that you'll always remember.
Some bells and takeaways there, and it's true. You only realise that as you get older, but if you can kind of keep that cognizant when you're younger, it really will serve you well. Because ultimately, like you said, that's all that remains one day is the memories. And like you said, we're all going to get to a place, unfortunately, where we're not able to do what we used to do.
Yeah.
You know, and the show's going to be over. No one's going to stand there and be like, oh, you know, they had this and they had that. They're going to be like, I remember when we did this. I remember when this person made me feel this way. Like, and that is it. And that's why experience is probably the key word there. Is what you want to work on as well. I did actually want to ask you about maybe what you have learned from being a dad as well, and maybe when did you meet Jolie? Obviously that came when you is there a story behind that one? Funny story,
yeah. So Jolie was actually my training partner's boyfriend at the gym that I was working at. So yeah, that was a funny one, because he's a cool dude, but he was a woman's man, so he had lots of girls.
Yeah.
And Jolie was just one of them, but she thought they were together, but he had other women. So I was always covering for him. You know, like he'd be upstairs with a girl, she'd come home and I'd have to keep her busy while he got rid of the other girl.
I see.
And it just got to a point where I actually really liked her.
Yeah.
But I'm a very loyal person. So I actually left New Zealand to get away from that situation and came to Australia. So she drove me to get my passport, you know, and I came over here. And there was absolutely nothing between us at the time.
Yeah.
But I always knew that she was a perfect woman to me. 5 years later, I decided I'm going to go back to New Zealand, and because I heard they broke up, and I got back, they didn't know where she was. So opened the phone book. I phoned every hairdressing salon in Auckland asking for Jolie until I found her.
Shit.
And then I went in to see her, and that's where it started. And
she was working in a
hair salon because she was a hairdresser, but I didn't know where she was. She was working in a hairdressing salon in Newmarket at the time. So I phoned. I just turned up.
Shit.
So I need a haircut.
5 years later.
5 years later, and she sat me down and goes, "What do you have?" And I said, "Number one." And she's got a number one, and she's going, "There's nothing's coming off," because I had a haircut before I went over there. So I said, "I'll go 0," you know.
Yeah.
And you know that's how it did, you know. And she came over to Australia, and you know, we just hit it off, and that's history.
Did you tell her the lengths you'd like gone through to find her?
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah.
That was
she learned that afterwards. I didn't tell her at the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then obviously, you know, sometimes you meet someone that everything is just simple. You know, I think you know when you've met the right person, when you can just be 100% you. There's no pretending. There's no, I really like, if she says I like ABBA. I love ABBA. You know, and I like the colour blue. Oh, it's my favourite colour. You know, because a lot of people do that. You know, the beginning of a relationship can be an act.
Agreeable.
Right? You know, you want to be agreeable, even if you disagree, because you don't want to upset them or the relationship. You really want to be with that person because they're so good looking or whatever. But then it gets to a point where you want to stop acting, right? And that can be 6 months or a year down the track. So now, you know, instead of actually saying, I don't fart, I actually do fart, you know, or whatever, you know, or, you know, pretending that things in your life were so aligned with her when they weren't. But with Jolie, it was never that way. Everything we did, I mean, everything I did as a normal person before her, I do with her, and it was perfectly all right. So when you align with someone so well, it was really quick for us. You know, she came over here to live with me in Australia, went to New Zealand, went to Adelaide, we travelled, I went to America, and they're all big tests for any relationship to travel around. And I can remember saying to my mum, because I've been 4 years, we hadn't been engaged or anything, I said to my mum, when do you really know? And my mum says, you never know, babe. You never know when you find the right person, because people do change. But she said, I've never seen two couples or two people come together as one person and be so natural. And so I asked her to marry me, and we got married, and then we started having babies. So that was the story of Jolie and me.
Yeah, I think there's some good takeaways as well. Even just listening to that myself, being in a serious relationship as well. Just even what your mum said is, it's good wisdom in that story.
Yeah.
And I think I often ask people, when do you know? How I don't know, and a lot of people who are wise or have that experience will say it's you don't necessarily know, but it works. It seems to it's smooth, it's an alignment, and I think, like you said, you can be completely you. You're not trying to be anything you not want to be, because it's, like you said, it's an act, and people see through it.
And eventually you just give up on acting. I think with my son and my daughter, into looking at relationships now, and the thing I say to them most is be honest with a person and be yourself. And if they don't like your honesty, then there's nothing you can do. You're being honest, but don't do something behind their back or do something that you're not being upfront to them about, because that's not right. And if someone doesn't forgive you for something, or you say, I'm not really into this relationship, it's not going the right way, it's not for me, then you're only being honest with yourself. Right, and obviously with Jolie, we've never had. And the other big one was, people say, relationships are hard. You've got to work at it, and you're going to argue, and there's going to be fights. And when people say it to me and Giles, I'm like, man, you know what? We've never had to work really hard at our relationship. If you have to always be working on a relationship, there's something wrong. And we've had a couple of arguments, but it's never been to the point where I'm not going to talk to you, or it's all over, or whatever. We've never said those words. I know people that say that, oh, fuck, I'm done, I'm out of here.
They say it regularly.
And they leave, and then they come back, and they leave, and they come back. And to me, sometimes I don't know how those relationships will ever mend, because once something's said, it's always to the other person, it's always in the back of their head. It just sometimes... I think you go through relationships, and you have relationships with different women and think, oh, this is great, this is awesome, and then you meet another one, oh yeah, this is better, and then you meet one, and there might be 100 women in the world that are like this for you.
Correct.
There might not just be one. I don't believe that everyone's got one soulmate.
I'm the same. Yes.
But I definitely believe that there's people out there might be 1,000, I don't know, that you meet, that you can live a really happy life with that person because you're so aligned. And I met Jolie.
Yeah, and then, like I said, it goes from there. But that is a salient point. I think a lot of people kind of glamorise the one. I always use a scenario. I say, if you stayed in New Zealand, and I spent 10 years there as well, we'd find someone. Maybe it was Jolie, maybe it wasn't. You're born here. I go back to England, live my life. I find someone there. So because you just do, don't you? But then it's like you said, it's what you're willing to sacrifice or settle for, or is it finding that person who, like you said, you align, it works, and you can be your true self, which is probably a good takeaway.
Yeah.
So I wanted to lead on before we wrap up as well to World Gym, obviously, which is kind of where we're at now as well. So maybe we can talk about how that came into fruition as well, and where things are at with present day. Yeah.
Okay. So World Gym. So I left Musashi. I sold my part of the business, which I had the distribution for Musashi in Queensland. Which again started from me working for free in a supplement shop.
It's great.
Crazy, right?
Yeah.
So one day owning the distribution that I was working for.
And you would have knew it inside out, back to front.
100%.
I think and a lot of top companies do that. It's like, someone who starts here and they've worked every role, and you go, oh, and they go, oh, well, I started doing this, and you go,
started cleaning the floors.
You know everything now, in terms of the ins, and that's great. Because I think people respect you as well when you understand every part of the business and you can't get the wool pulled over your eyes.
100%. And so I started with World Gym. It was an idea that Mike Niston, who's my partner, and I had. Let's start on open the gym. I've always wanted to open a gym. Don't have enough money to open a gym, but you know, I'll beg, steal and borrow from every friend I got to open a gym. But we didn't want to open Jon Davie's bodybuilding gym. But I wanted to have a serious brand, so we went to World Gym. We went to America, we looked at World Gym, we looked at Gold's, and we looked at Crunch. And World Gym already had brand recognition here. There was already a lot of people who knew the name World Gym, and also Gold's Gym. And it ranked only, like, I think Fitness First, 38% of the population knew Fitness First at the time, 28% of the population knew World Gym. There was no clubs here. There was 97 Fitness First. So we're like, okay, that's probably a good thing. So we started with World Gym, but from day one, it was, how do we get rid of the bodybuilding stigma attached to World Gym? Because it, you know, it started out as a bodybuilding gym, Arnold and Lou and all those guys, and before that it was Gold's. So originally it was like me and Mike would set up a gym each, and we set up one in Penrith first, and then we set up Ashmore, which was the OG. And then the opportunity came up to buy, we're thinking, man, you know, maybe we can get some friends out of ours into these gyms, you know, so if people started saying, oh, I'd like to do World Gym as well. So then we bought the rights for World Gym and we franchised it. But first and foremost, it was for me and Mike to open clubs. And what really made me more passionate about it was seeing people come into the gym. You know, you get, the gym industry is really interesting because it's the 1 hour of people's day that's their time. They can have the shittiest job, a bad relationship, whatever. And they come into the gym and they're like, I've got an hour to me. And the smiles on their face, they're doing stuff for themselves, their endorphins are elevated, they walk out, they're on a high, and you're dealing with this every day. So you're not dealing with negativity, it's always a positive environment. And I love that. And so then it went from, oh, how do I do, I've got one club, I'll do another one. And so then we just started reinvesting. And, you know, we grew the brand to about 20 clubs. And then we made a mistake. We believed that we needed someone else in the business that had different skill set to us. And we brought someone into the business who we had no alignment with, either morally in any way, shape or form, or ethically. And but we thought that that's what we needed. And it was the worst time of my life. There was probably 2 years ago it finished, but there was 3 years of my life that my whole world, everything I built seemed to crumble because we had brought this person in. And we had to get them out. You know, me and Mike didn't need it. It actually showed us how much we didn't need another person coming in, because we had, our morals and ethics were very strong. Our morals and ethics were, we'll never open a gym, we'll never allow a franchise to open a gym that we wouldn't do ourselves. Whereas this other person was like, let's just sell franchises everywhere and take $60,000 every time we sell an area. Let's sell 50 of them. We'll make $3 million this year. And we're like, yeah, but we know that that's not how it works, mate. Because I know it took me 4 years to find Ashmore. And it took, you know, 2 or 3 years to find Penrith. So I'm not taking people's money on the hope that they're going to open a gym. So
yeah, ethics.
There was it was a really tough time, but probably the most valuable thing I've learned in business. Sometimes what you think you need is already inside you. So sometimes you're thinking, how do I take this business to the next level? Because that's where we're at. We're at 20 clubs. We're thinking maybe we can get to 30 or 40 clubs. We just wanted enough clubs around Australia where wherever you went, there was a World Gym. And we already knew that. You know, it's just other people saying, oh, you should bring this person in, or you should do that. So sometimes in business, you know, you need to sit back and go, what are my morals? And do these other things, other people, other ideas align with my morals? And I think, you know, we're talking about EMF before, you know, and World Gym. I think both brands at the time were a serious offering. When I brought World Gym into Australia, it was, I'm not going to put a gym out there that I wouldn't want to train at. There's no area in that gym that I probably wouldn't utilise because it was a soft or dumbed down version. And at the time we all had a sleeper members, right? So a lot of gyms rely on people not turning up. And my whole thing, and Mike's, was, man, I feel like I'm ripping people off.
Yeah.
If they're not actually coming to my gym, they're paying for it. It's like going to a restaurant. Only a very small proportion of the people even wanting to come back.
Yeah.
EMF and us, and there's a few others out there, they kind of put a serious offering out at a time when the health food and the fitness industry was pretty soft. There were health clubs and fitness centres. They weren't gyms anymore where people sweated and people's ideas were sweating and lifting bars and all the rest of it. But there was this CrossFit thing happening and people leaving and smashing bars and squatting again, which was awesome. And you jump forward now to both those clubs and with World Gym, and we'll have 12 squat racks and every one of them's full, and there's 6 girls deadlifting or squatting. And so the industry's completely changed to what it was 20 years ago. So, what we started out doing at the beginning evolved into this full service club. And our push now with World Gym is we want to have the best facilities, tick as many boxes for people, find an area that someone can come into that gym and feel comfortable, whether they're a lady with a child, whether they want to do group fitness, a cycle, Pilates, yoga, bodybuilding, weightlifting, powerlifting. There's somewhere in our club that ticks their box. And if I can do that, then I'm winning, right? Because I'll have this community of people, and I need the community. I need males and females. So for 15 years, we've never put an ad up for bodybuilder in any of our advertising. Even though I love bodybuilding, I'm a bodybuilder, and in my perception, most people who come to a gym are in a way a bodybuilder. But it's just that's the degree you take it to, right? Yeah. I took it to the extreme degree. I could have stopped when I was 85 kilos, and had that athletic body build that most people look at and go, great. And it is real funny because I got asked that question: when were you when you're at your peak? Was that when you felt like the best or most popular? Was that what you did to get the girls or whatever? I'm like, mate, when you're 85 kilos and you look good, you're appealing to a girl. When you're 95 kilos, there's girls that kind of go, oh, you're a bit big. When you're 135 kilos, there's only a few girls that look at you and go, I like that body.
Exactly.
So it's got nothing to do with it. It's so,
if anything, you get more attention off guys.
Probably so, yeah.
That's what a lot of people say. It's like when you're really, when you're lean, girls go, yeah, but when you're shredded, they're like, oh no.
No, it's too much.
Yeah. Because most people have never seen truly very low percentiles of body fat. Yeah. It's a bit... Ooh.
That's right. But, what we're seeing now in the industry, I think, at the moment is people are coming out of COVID. People are getting involved in gyms that they never go into before. And it's making them feel comfortable in an area, in a space in your gym that they can work out. Maybe right over the other end of the gym, there's the bodybuilders lifting heavy weights, but they're in a comfort zone and they're doing their own thing and they're doing their classes and they're comfortable. And that is what I want, because I don't care what people do. If they come to the gym, great. If they walk the beach, if they run, if they play a sport, whatever, get fit, get into fitness, get healthy, because we live in a society at the moment where, there's weird things are happening in our community, right? And being healthy, I think, is your best defence against it. So, we're continually looking at evolving our model. The model has to evolve because industry is changing all the time. 10 years ago, yoga was introduced to work gyms. And it was an add-on membership. Now it's part of the timetable.
Yeah.
CrossFit 10 years ago was another club. Now it's part of the offering in a big box club like World Gym and EMF and some of the others.
Everything under one roof, right?
Everything's under one roof. So, our branding will get to a point, and it's heading that way now, where it's a boutique style club, boutique offerings inside a big box club with a fantastic gym floor with great equipment, great cardio deck, and just the atmosphere that what it's like when you've got a great atmosphere and great people around you. It makes your journey so much easier.
Oh yeah.
So that's the World Gym story. We're moving now into the next phase, but at the same time, we keep having to go back to those core values, because it's very easy when you get big to start thinking...
You dilute a little bit sometimes, don't you? You can sort of spread yourself a bit thin.
Do I want to follow that model, or do I, because there was times that people would go, oh, you know, change the name to World Gym Fitness Centres. I'm like, it's a gym, mate.
Keep it simple.
Keep it simple. You know, fitness centres or health club. I'm like...
Yeah. It's a bit like a life coach, isn't it? It's a
Yeah.
bit wanky.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's a bit... Because you might... I mean, it's sort of like you've got to be careful because it's interpretation as well. Like I always say to people, I said, when I say bodybuilding, what do you think of? And people go, Arnold. I'm like, right. But it's not, is it? Like,
No.
it is, but it's not just that. Because like you just said before, I say, well, aren't we all kind of building our body? But the girl over there deadlifting doesn't want to be jacked out of her mind, right?
No,
But she still
100%.
wants to get... She fundamentally wants to increase her muscle mass because that's going to give her the look she wants and lower body fat. Simple, right? It's a simplification where, yeah, and you keep it simple like that. One, it's a recognised brand, hence the name. People know what it is. It's familiar, and it does encompass everything.
Yeah.
And then you go and change it, and people go, "Hang on, what's changed?" And you go, "Well, no, we just sort of rebranded it." Why? Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
And it's a small word, so it's like all these little things, I guess.
Yeah,
But that was,
brand.
sorry, it was good what you said because I was going to ask you kind of what the trajectory was, but I guess you kind of answered that in, like you said, the evolution of it.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's one of those things at the moment. We could have, if I had set up, and goes back to the whole ethics and morals thing. If I'd set up a brand to make money, a gym brand, it would not be the brand I've got now.
It'd be Anytime Fitness or something.
It would be something completely different. I'd be selling 50 franchises a year, making them, you know, $2 or $3 million a year, and that just keeps rolling over. But I'm not morally and ethically aligned with that. You know, we've got nearly 40 clubs now, and most of them are people I know very well. They're family, there's fathers and mothers and kids working it, just like I was with Ashmore. And whenever I go to them, it's a proud moment for me. You know, I see some young guys that have, their father bought a gym and they're working in the business. It brings back the same memories that I have with my kids. So we'll have slow, you know, progress and setting up good clubs that stay around. We're not in it for opening a club that shuts in 5 years, like a lot of other clubs do. And I'm sure there's other brands out there that have the same mindset. But first and foremost, you know, I've got 7 clubs under mine and Mike's banner that we look at. So we're first and foremost gym owners. And I think that grounds us because as the industry changes, we make the changes for the franchise, as a franchise, master franchise, based on what's happening at ground level. A lot of franchise companies don't have any gyms themselves. They're just running a franchise model and telling people what to do. And when you're in that situation, you're not getting feedback of the people coming into the door, right? So
it's an empty experience.
Yeah.
You know, like you walk into those gyms, we'll leave the names out of it, but it's, yeah, there's no culture, there's no community, there's no presence, there's no vibe. And I think that's why people come back to a gym again. It's what we've been talking about the whole time, isn't it, really, John? It's the experience.
Yeah,
people come back for that. Oh, yeah, feels good. Oh, how's it going? Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I'm lucky, you know, with Ashmore's, this is 13th year. Ashmore's been there, and there's been people that have been there for 13 years. I've watched them raise their kids. Their kids went through creche, and their kids are now training.
Yeah, that's
so, you know,
cool to see.
It's pretty cool to see. But I think it's with any business, you know, like it doesn't matter, and you know, what business you're thinking about getting involved in. Make sure that you're morally and ethically putting out a product that you can, you know, you could be a PT working from home, and you're doing online coaching. You know, how do you make that online coaching a better experience for the member so they get better results, or your client to get better results? Is it catching up with them a little bit more often in a club and doing a, you know, whatever gets them the best result, because morally that's going to be more in line with you. You know, I know a lot of people that won't ever see their clients, and they just send the same information again that they've sent. They just change it a little bit, copy and paste. And I'm like, really? Is that morally okay to you?
There's no personalisation. It's just here's some numbers on a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
And this is we won't go down into this rabbit hole now, but yeah, it's hard, you know, and that's when you have to have a segregation between like services. Like coaching to me is personalised, but the personalisation might not be necessarily the macros or the numbers, because as you know, there's only, I say this to trainers all the time, and I'm like, look, I'm not going to make up exercises for you.
No.
I'm like, we're probably going to do the same thing for a long time, but how we do it and how we load it, refine it, that's what might change. But the way we communicate is going to be the personalisation. Because you might come in and you had a stressful week, and maybe we need to work the problem, or we're talking. But coaches don't think about that. It's just like, change that exercise for that, change those reps, drop your carbs a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh, well, maybe.
See
Yeah.
you next
all right.
week.
I mean, like, and and for some people that's all they want, but like, still, there should be some personal. I think that's why I sort of think about segregation between like this is customized meal plans, training plans. Disclaimer: that's what it is, based on you. Coaching, we're having a meaningful conversation every week, and it might be a minute, it might be 10 minutes, but let's touch base and just check in. That's a check in,
Yeah.
not here's your fucking numbers.
Because
personally,
I think we know as trainers, I used to be a trainer. I know that if you can get to them mentally and get them in the right headspace, the physical stuff happens.
and that's what a lot of trainers cannot articulate.
Yeah,
A lot of people have probably asked you in the past, how do you get the results you get? How do you get the results? And they're asking you like, what you eating, what you doing, and you see the trainer, and I'm like, look, there's no magic. And I say, I mean, my conclusion. I've only got 30 years here, so I'm not, bouncing with a lot of the experience. But I mean, it's valuable. Made a lot of mistakes, and I've learned from some amazing people. And what I've learned is that coaching is a series of meaningful conversations with somebody. And I always say to clients, I'm like, look, this is going to be really anticlimactic, and I'm like, it's going to be fucking almost boring in terms of like, I'm not going to give you anything magic. But the reason we'll get results is because we're going to use things that work, and we're going to talk about it, and we're going to check in, and we're going to have accountability and consistency and discipline. And then all of a sudden people are like, oh, it works now. And I'm like, yeah, but it always would have done.
Yeah.
But now we're empowering you to do it. We're making it sustainable, flexible, enjoyable, because they all come out of studying and they think they're going to train bodybuilders. I'm like, you're going to train a mom with a bad back and 3 kids.
100%.
And you need to fucking motivate her.
Yeah.
And it is your job. I personally think it is.
Yeah.
Because, but they're not thinking, they're looking at it one-dimensionally like numbers. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Maybe that's for an elite athlete because they're highly driven. They're already motivated. But for the person you're going to coach, they're the people that teach you a lot.
Yeah. 100%.
That's what I think about that. I wanna wrap up with a final question, and I appreciate your time. We'll probably talk about some plugs as well before we go. But if you could offer for people listening and watching anything that they can do every day, one thing, it could be simple, it can be free, that will have an impact or a positive impact on their life, what would be the one thing that you'd advise people to do to improve their life instantly?
Good question. I think I've always got up in the morning always got up in the morning and had time for myself. So I've always gone for a walk the dogs or something. That was always my time to think of my day, and my week and what my plans were. But it's also my grounding time, I think the most important thing that I could say to anyone, especially younger people now, is that you need to have a work ethic, a really strong work ethic. Don't be in this world, especially now. I worry about my kids because first house going to cost them $1 million, right? My first house cost me $400. My mum's first house was $16,000, and she had a $9,000 deposit.
Jesus.
Right, so things have changed.
Fuck yeah.
So for the younger people now, they really need to, for me it was getting out, doing the walk. But whatever it is, sit outside, think about your day, plan your day. Because the more structured you are in your day, the better result you get at the end of the day. And if you tick one day off, Tuesday off, Wednesday off, Thursday off, you get to Friday, and you've completed a great week. A lot of people go through their life without any structure. And I think that structure was taught to me through bodybuilding. Work ethic was high. My whole day was structured, and I got everything I needed to do done. When you don't have any structure, you get to the end of the day and something you didn't do, pass on to the next day, and then it never gets done. But I think, the most important thing I would say to people is find it, and it won't happen straight away, but find something you love doing, that you could see yourself doing this. Don't worry about the money, because the money will come, and the money doesn't define you. You come to this world with nothing, you leave this world with nothing. People will talk about you when you die. They won't talk about how much money you had, they'll talk about what impact you had on other people's lives. So find something that you can generally love to do, that you're morally aligned with, and then work your way to getting to that job. And whatever job you've got to do in the meantime, I've done some shit jobs, right? In my life, I've done some jobs that, the shittiest jobs you could
Clean the toilets.
Yeah, cleaning toilets. I was
it humbles you though.
Yeah. I was washing dishes at I was at Cocktails and Dreams. I was doing security on Friday, Saturday nights, but they couldn't give me enough shifts. So I was doing washing dishes for the other 3 nights. Yeah. Do whatever you've got to do, but don't settle for doing a job that pays you good money that you hate doing. Find a job that you love doing, and the money will come, and you'll make money. But the most important thing is you'll have a happy life, because money doesn't buy you happiness. It gives you the ability, to me, to have more opportunities, you know. And I'm definitely not saying that money is not important, because I've been broke and I've had enough money to pay my bills, and I prefer to be in a situation where I've had enough money to pay my bills. But it doesn't buy you happiness. You cannot buy yourself happiness. Your happiness comes through, you know, living your day in a role that you love doing.
It's a great way to round up a stimulating conversation. I think a lot of great takeaways as well, especially on that one, and a lot of people need to hear it, and I think repetitively as well, because it's easy to get caught up with today, especially where we live. There's a lot of nice shiny things, but again, it's very shallow. It's like, cool, sure, have those, but it must start the opposite way around, from the inside out, I think. And like you said, doing something that stimulates you, where you've got true happiness, and then everything else, like you said, it will come.
Yeah.
Which is something I've definitely.
And when you're doing that, you meet the right people. You do. When you're doing something you love, you'll meet the people. That's where I met my wife. I met my wife in the gym, because that was something where I wanted to be. It's something where she wanted to be. We were morally aligned in that space. I wasn't in a job I hated, and I didn't meet a girl that was in a job she hated. I met a woman. So it goes right through your life, you know.
It does.
And people you associate with and all the rest of it.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. For people who might want to reach out, any questions, queries, I'm not sure if you're big on social, or if they want to come to the gym, where are the best places for people to connect and find you? Yeah,
just, if someone wants to shoot me an email, I talk to anyone. I do a lot of youth programs, outreach stuff. So just get to me on Jon, Jon, at worldgymaustralia.com, or go to my Instagram site, which is WGJon, or Facebook me. I answer anyone's questions.
Yeah, and I appreciate that as well. It's good. I'll put the links, guys, for anyone listening and watching as well in the show notes if you've got a question for Jon. As you can tell, he's a down-to-earth bloke. He's got a lot of genuine experience, so reach out, and we'll go from there. Jon, thanks for your time.
No worries, buddy.
I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you. No problems, mate. Thanks for that.
Yeah, for sure. All right, guys, as always, remember, if you liked it, give us a like, comment, subscribe. I've got to say it. And again, probably pay it forward. If there's someone that you think is going to value listening to this conversation, make sure you send it over to them. We really appreciate it. And of course, until next time, stay fearless. For those of you who are confused, frustrated, and sick and tired of not seeing the results that you want or deserve, make sure that you click the Apply for Coaching button in the description below and line up a completely free consultation with myself, where we can discover if it's a good fit as client and coach, and take your health and physique to the next level once and for all.